You're listening to The Girl Dad Show.
Welcome to Season 3 of The Girl Dad Show, where we explore the intersection of parenthood and entrepreneurial spirit. Join me and some incredible guests as we share tips and tricks for finding work-life balance and making a positive impact not only on the world, but also our families. Let's create a fulfilling life together. It's The Girl Dad Show, Season 3. Tina, what's going on? Thank you so much for joining me on my show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, we finally did it. I feel like this was a long time in coming, took a lot of work on both of our parts to make work, but here we are.
Hopefully it was worth the wait.
It is going to be worth the wait. Hopefully it's worth the wait. I love it. Let's jump right into it. So why don't you tell the listeners what you do for a living?
So I am the CEO and CXO of Color Factory. It's an immersive art experience inspired by the joy of color. And we have locations in Chicago, New York, and in Houston.
That's amazing. And what are some of the big projects that you're currently working on at Color Factory?
I am working on a million different projects. We wrapped up and built our third location last June. So that was a big accomplishment for our team. I've been CEO for about a year and a half now. And so I'm really just working on kind of like getting our machine in order and optimizing everything we can optimize, becoming really efficient, making sure we have the right people in the right place. Before we start to scale even bigger, I want to make sure that these fundamentals of the business are in a really healthy place. So that is my focus right now.
That's awesome. And then do you mind sharing a little bit about how you became the CEO and what that journey was like?
So yeah, I started at Color Factory 5 years ago. My first title, I don't know if you even know this, was COO. So I was the second hire at the company once we kind of took over from a corporate level. And it was really just a vanity title because I was the second person at the company. And so I just needed that clout when I was having conversations. But really my focus was the experience. So my background is all experience related. I lived in New York City and I was an event producer. I worked in experiential marketing for 15 years. So I was a producer, and so I would basically project manage experiential events that happened in New York, mostly New York, LA, and Miami. And so when I started at Color Factory, I was overseeing the experience department, so design, production, construction, and the build-outs of our new exhibit. So Houston was the very first one that I built. And then eventually my title transitioned to Chief Experience Officer, CXO. And then at the end of 2021, I transitioned to CEO.
Wow.
So our previous awesome. CEO stepped down and then the board appointed me to take over. So
that's wonderful. I love that background and experience. So you were like a function expert that ended up being able to join a company like Color Factory as it grew and rose through the ranks through function expertise and led you to the role of running the company.
Yes, I'm definitely a product-focused CEO.
I love that. That's awesome. And then tell us about your kids. How old are they, and when did you start having them? At what stage of this transition were you a mom? Yeah.
So my son is 6 and my daughter's 4. So in between the first two, I was super pregnant when we were building out the Houston location. I think I had like 5 days of maternity leave. And,
oh my gosh.
I wouldn't recommend it, but so I was definitely waddling around that construction site.
Oh my god!
So that location is near and dear to my heart for sure.
Oh man! And were you planning on this situation, or were you trying to, or was it just a matter of necessity, or was it like, were you trying to have a kid during that time, or it was just more you had two separate goals? And how did that happen to be that you're opening a new location while
it just all kind of happened at once. They were both things I wanted, and I thought the timing would be a little bit different for both of those projects, if you will. But they just overlapped, and I made the most of it, did the best I could to survive.
Yeah, I think that that's actually the right way to think about it. In hindsight, I mean, this is my personal opinion as I've become a much more experienced father. Um, I wish I had just like kind of did it separately because I tried so hard to plan both of those things and so it would be more efficient and maximize. And the reality is, when I look back at it, I'm like, I should have just started sooner, and just had it and just made it work and figured it out because you're never really ready,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a fallacy, to even think that you're smart enough to plan this well, it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, so.
Yeah. No, you're never ready for either thing, like the big job or the kids.
That's right. That's right. Well, let's talk about your childhood. How did you grow up?
I grew up pretty normal childhood. I had two older sisters, so I'm the youngest of three. And I would say that they definitely paved the way. Typical kind of Indian American upbringing.
Yeah.
I think that they had a lot more hurdles to overcome than I did, and they like to remind me of that often.
Yeah.
That I had it the easiest, but and there was a pretty big age gap between me and my sisters. So my eldest sister is 10 and a half years older than me.
Mm.
And then my middle sister is 6 years older than me. So in a way, there were times where I felt like almost like an only child at times, especially when my eldest sister went off to college. And then, she raised me a lot of it too, because, both my parents were working. My mom, she was an OR nurse. And so she worked a lot and she did a lot of like calls. So she was on calls on the weekends. And so, my sisters played a big role in my upbringing for sure. So grew up in Dallas, and there's a big Indian American community there. And so, yeah, I would say that it was relatively normal, but there were things that were like, my parents were still strict relative to my American friends. So, sleepovers were not always cool with them. Football games, parties. Like I didn't do any of that stuff. I never drank a sip of alcohol and all that. So I was like a good kid, and I did really well in school, and so it was relatively normal.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's
Yeah.
also not like that you're, it's like both that you were kind of like a only child in the sense that there's a big age gap, but it also sounds like you had multiple parents to a certain degree too.
Yeah.
'Cause it sounds like both your sisters played partial parental versus sister, or at least they hybrided it.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
my oldest sister. Yeah. She
That's
still
awesome.
does that today sometimes.
And how has that impacted the way that you think about being a mom?
Like my parents, just like the way
your
my
parents and your
childhood.
sister now at this point. I have to include them as well to this
Yeah.
because they sound like they had a huge impact on how you were raised.
Yeah, I would say with work, definitely the work ethic, I would say, is something that was instilled in me at a very young age. My mom and dad worked really, really hard. My mom, like I said, was an OR nurse, and she was on call, so she was working a lot. My dad, he had a job, and then he had a side hustle where he would, rent out all the homes that we had instead of like when they would move to a new home, instead of selling that house, he would keep it and rent it out. And he was the landlord. He was the one, the super who was fixing all the issues. So it was sort of like he had two full-time jobs. And so I think I just, that's all I knew. And I think that work ethic is definitely makes me who I am today. I worked, since I was 15. As soon as it was like legal for me to work, I was working, and it's not because anyone told me to, it's just because I wanted to. So I think working hard just comes from being surrounded by it my whole life and not thinking that it should be anything different.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then what about for your kids? 'Cause you're kind of working a lot right now too, aren't you? So are they kind of saying the same thing?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I try really hard to have balance. Like, it's hard, but I find the hours that are not, important for them, And I work in those hours. So, when they're at school, I'm working, but then I try really hard to be the one that picks them up every day. And, we have our morning routine and like bedtime routine. As stressful as it can be, is like one of my favorite parts of the day, and I won't give that up. And if it means I have to work after bedtime, like it's part of the game. So yeah,
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then, so are you trying to be a little bit different with the kids then? It sounds like you are trying to like change a little bit of the work-life balance, or at least the presence or the time that you're spending. So you're trying to like change a little bit of it. Is that accurate, or?
Yeah, and I would say that like maybe I misrepresented my parents a little bit, because they also were pretty good at that. Like my dad always dropped me off at school, my mom always picked me up. And so they were always there. There was always someone there. But yeah, I'm trying to do a better job with it, find that balance. I think what my parents did a good job of was putting up the guardrails for me. But then we're hands off when it came to what I did within those guardrails, because they just trusted that I was going to make good decisions.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think of it as a lot like just like, evolution or evolving or upgrading, right? Like my parents are able to provide, a level of life for me that was better than theirs. And then I'm able to provide, a better parenting or family life for my kids that was better than what I received, and so on and so forth. It's like almost like paying it forward because of the work that they did, right? And so I see it a lot of ways as like an evolution, but it is really interesting to hear you talk about your parents, because it does sound like you are kind of mimicking a lot of what they're doing as it relates to squeezing in the important moments, but working really hard around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in your current state, how do you qualify success in parenting? What is a good parent to you right now, and what do you think would be awesome for you in the future? What do you want?
I want them to be able to come to me with any problem. So even if they caused it, to not be scared of us. Because I think that, we talk a lot about like Asian parents and how they can be a little overbearing sometimes. And there's definitely times where I would hide things from them just because I was scared. Yeah. And that's one thing I want to kind of break the mold on, and, have them be, know that they can come to us for support, for guidance, and just sort of be their friend, but also have them know that we are their parent too. So we can be firm and set ground rules for them. So I think if I can achieve that, then I will feel like I'm doing something right.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a really good caliber, and I totally support that. And it's something that I've been wrestling a lot with as well too, because I feel like I accidentally become very critical and overbearing, and I can see my parents in me when the kids mess up or do something wrong. And I always got to remind myself that like the end goal for me is also very similar to yours, is that I want to create a relationship and be able to transition with them as they get older. Obviously right now it's not as critical, because like they're still trying to figure out how to brush their teeth correctly and, and things like that, so there's a little bit more like black and whiteness to it, but
you're just like don't pee in your pants, please.
That's exactly right. The problem set is much more binary right now, so I'm still safe, but I could see very quickly how, especially Lily, as she becomes 7 and 8, starting to like form her own thoughts and understand what good and bad is, and having a little more freedom. I could see her being scared to bring things to me if I keep down this path of like being so critical, right? And so I think it's a really good barometer. This episode of The Girl Dad Show is brought to you by Owners Club. As a business owner myself, I know firsthand how challenging the journey can be. Whether it's having someone that I can ask a very tactical question to, or just being able to share my big successes without guilt. Building a business is a lonely journey, and it does not have to be. After building and coaching dozens of businesses to success, there is one insight that is so obvious and simple, yet hard to execute. And that is network equals net worth. And so if you're a growth-minded, supportive, smart, and hardworking business owner looking for a community of like-minded entrepreneurs to build with, look no further than the Owners Club. You will make lifelong friends and build your business that works for you. You can learn more online at owners.club. Let me switch gears. What do you think about success? What's business success to you?
Um, I mean, it's silly, but I religiously read our reviews. Like, Color Factory is a very
Nice.
public facing business. And so to me, success is satisfying our guests. And so every single Google review, every single Yelp review that is left, I read it. Um, and I think that's important because I think it always comes down to the experience. And I just think Color Factory has a really important mission. And I think if we can connect with our customers and exceed their expectations as much as possible, then success will follow.
That's awesome. Very good. Very good. It's also very interesting because you are super into the product and experience of Color Factory, yet you have a very, very interesting perspective on the barometer that you qualify that. It's just basically customer reviews and how they feel about it and perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that you're product-led CEO, but you really do care about the customer. So it's almost like a mixture of both. You're customer-centric and product-centric.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. That's really, really helpful. Very good. So if you had to qualify what it means, or quantify even what it means to be a good parent and also being successful at work, what would you say are some of the things that you think are the same and things that are different?
I think it's a juggling act. I think, especially for a mom, there's just like a mental load that you just carry with you. And so there's a quote that I read early on in motherhood, because I pretty much started working, after 6 months after having my son, that there's this notion that with work and with family, there are glass balls and there are plastic balls. And you're juggling them. And if you drop a plastic ball, it bounces, no harm done. But if you drop a glass ball, it shatters. And so the key is like knowing which ones are glass and which ones are plastic, and knowing some kid stuff is glass, some is plastic. And if you need to drop a plastic kid ball to catch a glass work ball, that's okay. And so I think that quote really resonated with me because I had one of the, I've done the Enneagram personality test, and I'm a little bit perfectionist, and so it was really hard for me to not be good at everything. And it was bandwidth, right? It's timing. All of a sudden when you're a parent, it's like a working parent, you just have so much on your plate. And so it was a struggle for me to not be able to be good at everything. And so that quote really helped me just realize you gotta just let things go. Catch the glass balls. Some plastic balls will drop, and it's gonna be okay. You can pick that one back up tomorrow.
It's awesome. It's a really great quote, and I've never heard of that one before. And it's actually so good to think about, because at the end of the day, being successful in your career and also in your family is literally just juggling, because there's just a finite amount of time, and so really you have to figure out what that is. Can I ask how you figure out which ones are plastic and glass? Do you have a framework or decision matrix, or is it it's more art than science? So you just gotta figure it as you go.
Yeah, you just kind of figure it out as you go. But I think it's also I've rarely had trouble. It's pretty clear, right?
Yeah.
Do I need to volunteer for every PTA thing? No. Those are plastic balls. One or two, where I'll actually get some quality time with my kid, like a field trip or something. Yeah, that to me is a glass ball, and I want to have those moments with my kids. So yeah, I think you just kind of assess it as you go.
Yeah. And then if you don't mind me kind of hop skipping and jumping here, how does it work out for your transition from CXO to CEO and your husband and family? Was there some sort of decision matrix on that, or is this something that you just wanted to do and the opportunity came you in for it? How did you make that change with toddlers? You must have known that was a huge undertaking before you accepted the role.
Yes, it was challenging. I think that I definitely waffled a little bit.
You did?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I think I initially said no.
Oh, wow.
Because I mean, I love being CXO. Like,
Yeah.
when I sort of reached that level, I was just sort of like, this is everything in my career has brought me to this point. I love my team. I love what we're producing, what we're creating, what we're building. And so I was just sort of like, why would I want to do any less of that?
Yeah.
But it came down to just the fact that I love this brand so much and I love this company so much. And I wanted to make sure that it was being led by someone who really understood the nuances of Color Factory and just how important it is and the aesthetic and the voice and all of those things. And I didn't want any of that to change with, someone who maybe just, it takes a long time to really understand our brand. And so it was definitely a family decision. And luckily, I think, my husband, he works in finance, but he has a little bit more flex with his schedule. And so, he was just like, go for it. Like, let's give it a shot, And so that was kind of the push I needed to just jump in and give it a shot. And so it's November will be 2 years.
Oh, pre-congratulations. That's very exciting. That's amazing. Almost 2 years in the role. And that's a really cool story about why you did it. It sounds like it was less about the strategy of your career and more about your passion and love for the brand and the risk that may have come from not taking the role. That's super interesting.
That's exactly what it was. Because up until 2 weeks before, the thought never even crossed my mind that I would be CEO ever. Like, I never even thought about it, never wanted it, nothing. And so I had to wrap my head around it pretty quickly.
Yeah. It's probably the first time I've ever heard anybody accepting a CEO position for those reasons. It's like, it's my duty to protect the brand and the sanctity of what it stands for.
Yeah.
That's really very interesting. I love it. Very cool.
Well, and I think there was also this element of I've never done this before.
Yeah.
I've not, a little bit of fear. Like,
yeah,
can I do this? And I just kind of thought about it as this is just like any of the multi-million-dollar projects, experiences that you've created for, big brands, but it's just your own brand, right? And so in a way, it's the biggest project I've ever managed.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. I love that too. It's awesome. All right, Tina. Well, let me switch gears a little bit and ask you some rapid fire questions that I like to ask every guest, and we can get you back onto your way here. So, first one, what advice do you have for other parents and soon-to-be parents?
I would definitely tell them that quote about the plastic and glass balls.
It's a great one.
And then I would also say don't be afraid to outsource some of the plastic balls. I think that when you first start out as a parent, you want to do everything and you want to try and manage and control everything, and it's okay to let some of that stuff go and let other people help you. I think it takes a village, so take people up on their offers. I would also say don't forget who you used to be. I think it's, for me personally, I've found it's just important to have me time. So girls trips, or even just an hour where you're just sitting outside and reading a book. Whatever you need to do periodically to remember who you were before becoming a parent. Because I think it's easy for people to sort of lose their identity a little bit when they get wrapped up in the gauntlet. And then I think that also applies to the relationship with your partner. So put a monthly date night in the calendar, take the trips, don't have guilt about it, because in the end it's better for everyone. It's better for you, it's better for your kids. It's important to keep that bond strong, and I just think relationships with your partner are like plants and they need to be watered. So water that plant.
Beautiful. I love it. If you can go back and tell yourself one thing before having kids, what will you go tell yourself?
I think there will be good parenting days and there will be bad parenting days. Not bad, but not great parenting days. And that's okay. It's all part of the journey. Go easy on yourself. There's no such thing as perfect. And then if you have a boy, always cover the penis.
Oh, and the diaper changes and stuff. Yeah, totally. That is so funny. It's so true. I love it. Amazing. Okay, moving on. What is the most surprising thing that you've learned about yourself after becoming a parent?
I think that it's, I'm a project manager. Like that's the core of what I do. Having kids is the hardest project I've ever managed in my life. But at the same time, it's so rewarding and so fulfilling. So I think that was a surprise. And then just time is precious. I think, I don't think I realized how fleeting time is. And so I didn't think about time as much before I had kids. And now it's just like, I'm so aware of how precious it is, just seeing the kids grow up so quickly. It needs to be managed carefully. It needs to include me time. And I think I mentioned earlier, but I realized that I need that me time bucket filled in order to be a good parent.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's so true. And it's like one of those things that I have to wrap my brain around all the time too. And a lot more conversations between Amy and I around how fast the kids are growing. It's kind of crazy. We kept thinking like, oh, there's so much time, but we're already like 6 years in, looking at seven. It's just crazy how fast it's gone. Yeah. And it doesn't, I just want it to go back. Like when they were small and cute, and I should have cherished it more. I'm already feeling like I didn't enjoy it as much. And so it's so good. Such good advice.
Yeah. But the thing is, you probably did enjoy it and you captured it. And
totally. Totally. I just want more. I miss it.
I know.
Yeah. Okay. What is your all-time favorite business book?
So I recently read a book called The Power of Moments. And it's about how certain quick experiences can change us, can jolt us, can elevate us. And I think that a lot of what I read in this book defined, there's ways to apply it to both work and life. So little things like, we recently had two executives last day, and I wanted to celebrate their last day, and I think like people celebrate the beginning of work, but what about their last day? And so, we had like a ChatGPT funny poem that we read, and we just kind of like all clapped and cheered for them. And so I think just little moments, they take effort, but they can really elevate people and the journey. So
yeah,
that's definitely one of them. There's another one called Joyful that we reference a lot, just on the experience team. That one's more about design, and they did studies in neuroscience and psychology, and really broke down what it takes to create a joyful visual. And so those principles are abundance, play, and magic. And so abundance is like literally like a kaleidoscope, confetti, like the ball pit, right? So there's like a maximalist moment. Yeah. Play is, something that's amusing, curved edges, playful, nostalgic, and then magic. That's magic. Create, making it seem like it couldn't happen by itself. So I use that a lot, and I think about that a lot when we're creating experiences at Color Factory.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. I haven't read either one of those, so I'll have to check them both out. All right. And then to bring us home, Tina, when you're not the CEO of Color Factory or being a super mom to your kids, what does Tina do for fun? What's your downtime activities?
I really love playing tennis. I'm like, I have a competitive bug, and I grew up playing sports. And so I'm now in a tennis league, and I play with strangers just because it helps me to sort of like just stroke that. I don't know what it is, but it just like gives me a lot of energy. And so I play tennis. I enjoy cooking for fun. weekday stress cooking is not my favorite, but like on a Sunday, I like a Sunday supper. So those would be the two big ones, and then traveling.
Oh, I love it. That's great. I didn't know you were doing the tennis thing. That's awesome.
I had a match this morning.
Oh, that's great. You're out there in a league even, like competing against people. I love it. That's awesome. Well, Tina, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to talk to me about Color Factory and what you do there, as well as being a parent and mom. I really do appreciate the time and all of the insight that you've been able to provide.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, I'm glad that we finally made it work. It was a labor of love scheduling it, but I'm glad we got it.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes, no, you're a busy woman. I love it. We'll talk soon, okay?
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jan. Bye.
This episode of The Girl Dad Show is brought to you by you. We have been working very hard to bring you the best guests and content to the show and have been steadily growing month over month. And we're finally ready to start talking to businesses that want to partner with us to promote on our show. So if you know anyone that would be interested in having me promote their business on The Girl Dad Show, please email us at young@thegirldadshow.com. Thank you for your support and look forward to learning how to be a great parent together.